Welcome to Whole CEO with Lisa G. I'm the best-selling author of The Boss Weight Loss. I'm bringing you the top tips to be unstoppable. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to actually pull up a chair with today's top experts in mindset, weight loss, business, and more. Learn our top tips so that you can have more energy, be fit and resilient, feel unstoppable, unshakable, and unbreakable. In 2014, his father passed away from a heart attack suddenly. It was devastating at the time. His marriage was falling apart. He was working a job that didn't fulfill him, and he was thousands of dollars in debt. This began his search to uncover a methodology to find success and fulfillment in life. The methodology he discovered changed his life completely, leading him to join Tesla. And in under 4 years, he worked his way up to running sales training at a national level, responsible for the development and execution of training and coaching programs for hundreds of employees throughout North America, also leading him to find peace, contentment, and fulfillment no matter the external circumstances. Now his mission is to help professionals build careers they love while avoiding stress, anxiety, and burnout with coaching. Welcome to Whole CEO with Lisa G. Jay Abbasi.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Thank you for the introduction. I'm glad to be here.
I'm so happy to have you here. I shared with you a little bit off camera that I myself struggle with anxiety, with all the uncertainty that has been thrown at us in the last couple of years. That's why I've launched the podcast to help people be unstoppable. And I really believe in what you do. So jumping in, how can we be uninterruptible with mindfulness as a vehicle for career growth?
Yeah. So what we can do is make time for ourselves, for self-care practices that will give us the opportunity to pause. We're all running and we're running and we're running. It's one thing to the next, to the next. And what I find is that if you don't give yourself the opportunity to pause, even though you're keeping yourself busy, underneath the surface, things are bubbling up. Things are bubbling up, and it leads to what oftentimes is referred to as burnout, or to crashing, or to feeling completely unhappy and unsatisfied with one's life and one's career. So there are a few things to do. The first thing is making time every day to pause, to practice mindfulness in a formal way. For some people, it's meditation. For some people, it's yoga. Some people, it's exercise. Find what works for you, but make sure you're doing it consistently. And then throughout the day, to have moments of pause. Put it right into the calendar, block it in to where you are giving yourself an opportunity to pause, time for yourself, not running from one thing to the next, no devices, no phones, nothing, just giving yourself the opportunity to pause.
I love that you mentioned the opportunity to pause because I'm already doing the other stuff. I love exercising because I'm such an anxious freak. It really calms me down. Meditation, I'm obsessed with it, and yoga. But I think the missing link for me is maybe putting some reminders in my phone to pause.
Yeah, and it's even the phone itself, Lisa, because how often are we looking at these devices
Oh my God, way
and
too much.
and they're anxiety inducing. I
Yes,
mean, how the human mind is meant to operate is not to be constantly stimulated. That's
right.
why it leads to negative repercussions, because we're taking in so much stimuli. It's social media, it's news, it's text messages, it's emails, and it's flooding our minds. We're not able to keep up with it all. We can't stop our thinking. So the pausing, intentional pausing throughout the day, as well as setting rules for yourself as to how you are using your device rather than your device using you.
I love that distinction of having boundaries around our devices because I don't know what happened as an entrepreneur. My phone and computer have thought they can jump into bed with me every single night. And I keep telling them, jump out. You're not welcome here. And they jump in again. So I really feel like I need to also to practice what I preach and to me, what causes a lot of anxiety is all of the spam calls and texts and emails constantly coming at me. It is like a barrage. So how do you have people set boundaries around their devices?
That's a great question. So while everyone's a bit different, because you do have to take into account someone's career, it could really require them to be available and have their phone ring or vibrate at a certain time, right? It could be quite urgent. I find that most people, that's not the case. Most
Right.
people, it's not as urgent as you're telling yourself it is to be
Right.
responding to every email. So, for one, completely make your phone silent. Just make it silent. It
Right.
doesn't need to make a noise or buzz every time. That's the first thing. And then the second thing, set the guidelines on the phone. That's why the settings are there, to determine what notifications you do get and which
Right.
ones you don't. And then having time in the day where you are blocked to review email, where you have time to check your messages, time to review social media, but you stick to those blocks
Right.
rather than being in a state of reactivity to what the phone keeps presenting you. And then the other thing, Lisa, I would say is this: make time every day where you are completely device free. The
Yeah.
phone is in a completely
Don't
different
don't
room.
have that phone hooked to my hand.
Right, exactly, because it's usually glued there, right? And it never leaves, right? So have it in a drawer somewhere, have it completely in a different room. You don't need it around you as much as you think that you do.
I love these boundaries that you're setting and about settings. I mean, it seems so simple. Like I know I have settings around when my phone could be sleeping, but I think it's so good to have a clear schedule about when you check email, when you check social media, and when you're going to respond. And so many people think that because of technology that you're accessible 24/7, and that has not been good for our mental health, has it?
It hasn't. It hasn't. And here's the thing, it all comes down to the expectations that we have of ourselves and how of what others have of us. So I have a portfolio of clients in the work that I do. If every time my client emailed me, I replied within 5 minutes, right? The
Right.
first time, I've now set that expectation that I
Right.
reply to every email within 5 minutes, and now the other person thinks that that's the way it is.
Right.
However, with every relationship that I establish with my clients or anyone else for that matter, I reply when I have the time to reply. So I have, for one, the expectation of myself, which is that I don't reply to every email within 5 minutes of receiving it, right?
Right.
And then the way I respond creates the expectation in the other person that this is the way in which Jay communicates. And most people understand. Lisa, you're busy. I'm busy. We are responsible for so much in our lives that while it might seem on the surface, oh, wow, I want to be that person that responds quickly to everybody and it looks really good. Okay, at the surface, there's some truth to that. But what is it costing you in the end?
I love that because it's the same thing in life. Like you're training people how to teach you by the way you treat yourself. So if you're
Right.
treating yourself like every single communication is a fire that you have to put out, then people are thinking that you can put out those fires 24/7, and that's not fair to ourselves as
Yes.
coaches.
Exactly. And it's a conversation that can be had with anyone early on. So whether it's you're a coach, a consultant, or even a CEO, a leader of an organization, with everyone that you will be communicating with, one of the first conversations that you could have is about the boundaries. You can set that expectation early on, which is to say, if you send me an email, typically I respond within this timeline. If you send me a text message, typically I'm going to respond within this timeline. If you're the proactive person who's setting that kind of boundary, then the other person won't ever feel strange about the fact that, oh, you didn't reply quickly. So then it also relieves the pressure from you, right? Because
Right.
you don't have that pressure of, oh, I have to get back to that person as soon as possible. No, I've already set that standard. They know that this is the
Yeah.
way.
I hope you guys are taking notes here on boundaries because this can help you in so many parts of your life. I want to ask you another question too, Jay, because you're such a wealth of information on mindfulness. Why do we need to forget about managing our time and manage ourselves to be unstoppable?
That's a great question. Well, we all have the same amount of hours in a day. And when we think about, or when we say things like, I don't have the time for that.
Right.
It's simply not true.
It's
It's not true.
a priority. Yeah.
Right. You're saying you're not going to make the time for that.
Correct. Yeah.
So if you're managing yourself, you identify what is the greatest value, what is the top priority, what are the things that matter most to you. And if you're very clear on what those things are, then you are scheduling your time according to your priorities. So when I say manage yourself, you're managing what is how you wish to use your time. It isn't as though there's this time monster out there that you have to work with, and the time monster is the one that's putting all these things on your calendar. No, you're doing it, whether you're conscious of it or not. So I encourage people to be more conscious, to be more mindful of how they are choosing to spend their time. And when you do that, you're more effectively managing yourself, and then the time ends up getting managed as a subset to that.
There is nothing truer than true about the fact that we all have the same 24 hours in the day. And to be truly happy and fulfilled, you have to master your time.
Yeah. And master yourself, right? Because there's nothing more challenging than mastering yourself.
That's the hard part.
That's the hard part, right? It is easy to point at someone else and point out their flaws and try and manage them and have them do different things. It's much harder to go within, do that introspective work, and be more or take more inventory of one's own values, one's own challenges, one's own flaws, not to beat yourself up, but to do it a bit objectively so that you can then be able to manifest and create what it is that you really wish to create. It starts from within, and that's not something that everyone's willing to do.
Oh, I agree. It wasn't until everybody else was doing everything wrong that I hit a certain level of pain, I'd say 10 years ago in relationships, where I realized that it was me and that I had to do those self-mastery within, and that it was no accident that I was attracting the same things into my life over and over again till I started diving a little deeper into personal development.
Well said. Yeah, that's I think so many of us have been on that journey. I know I have as well, so I can relate to everything you're saying. And what I realized in my life is I need to take full ownership of everything. I am completely responsible for all of it. And when you do that, at first it could seem a bit scary, but then it is quite freeing to know that, I am in control. It is fully my responsibility how I respond to these situations, how I manage myself, how I build out the time or spend the time that I have. All of that is within your control. And it's quite fascinating to really internalize that and then start to live it.
I love the fact that you said how you respond to the circumstances is our control, because all the stuff is going to happen. Like if the 2 years that we've just gone through is any example of that, and all the things that happened to you and to me personally, it's your reaction and your response. That's your responsibility, right?
Yeah. And Lisa, speaking of the last 2 years, I heard so many people say this, oh, there's so much uncertainty. I can't handle the uncertainty.
Right.
And whenever I would hear that, I would go, wait a minute. When was there certainty?
Right. Life isn't certain.
Right. Can you tell me about the time when there was absolute certainty? And if you lived it, I'm interested, because I've never had that. I've never had that experience.
Good point.
Uncertainty is the only certainty. It is the only constant, is that there is uncertainty. So the problem I think that many people had over the last 2 years, and some people are still in it, which is it got spotlighted. The uncertainty was spotlighted, and it drew their awareness to an uncertainty that they were ignoring.
Right.
Right. So rather than ignore the uncertainty, lean into it, accept it, have full acceptance of the fact that you don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. You don't know what will happen either with your company or with the people in your life. You really don't know. But when you can embrace that, it actually is quite grounding, and it helps you to live fully in the present moment and to savor what you have here and now, because you realize that uncertainty is here and it's not going away.
Absolutely. It doesn't look like that's going away anytime soon. And I agree with you. It's about the silver linings that you can look for in the uncertainty and acceptance of the fact.
Yeah, absolutely. I tell many of my clients, I say, keep these two words in mind: expect and accept. Expect and accept. Expect that the things that you have planned may not go according to plan.
I've experienced that myself.
Right. Expect that. It doesn't mean have a negative expectation. I don't mean expect that you're going to fail. No, no, no. Have the expectation that you will figure it out, even though challenges will come that you will never have thought will come. Have that expectation with full acceptance of everything that's going to happen. And when you can expect and accept, when you can do that, life just flows so much easier for you.
Another wisdom bomb, Jay Abbasi. I have one more question for you. What is the power of stories that we tell ourselves and the stories we tell others?
Yeah. So we are meaning-making machines. I like to think of us as beings that are adding meaning to every situation. We think that this situation was positive, that situation was negative. But in reality, the situation itself objectively is just the situation.
Right.
We add the story to it. We give the meaning, we give the flavor to it and suggest that this is negative or this is positive. So in that, there's great power, because if you are more conscious of the story that you're telling yourself, you become more aware of it, you can shift that story to one that better serves you. Because in the end, whether the story is true or not doesn't end up mattering. What ends up mattering is, does that story serve you? Does it lead you to greater sense of happiness and peace and get towards the results that you really want to get to? If that's what the story does for you, then go with that story. But if the story that you've been telling yourself is one that leads you towards stress, anxiety, overwhelm, or negative results, then you need to change that story. So internally, it's incredibly important to recognize, take inventory. What is the story you're telling yourself about this situation? And what's a better story you could be telling if it's not serving you? Then the second aspect is, in terms of communication, I think it's so important for professionals, whether you're a corporate professional, you're an entrepreneur, whatever it is, to be aware of your story, to acknowledge your story.
Yeah.
And for two reasons. One, it helps you to be more mindful and conscious of the positive aspects of your experience, because your mind wants to go to the negative more. So be sure that you're taking inventory of your good stories, of the great things that you've accomplished and achieved. And then the second thing is so that you can more effectively communicate your story to others in any situation where it arises, whether that's being interviewed in like a situation like this, or whether it's to communicate it in a public speaking event or whatever it is. But be able to communicate your story in a way that compels the audience, that really showcases your natural ability and the value that you've given others. And so I find that too often people aren't taking the time to really understand or write their own stories. And I think it's an important aspect to one's career, one's personal life and professional life.
Well, thank you for that. I'm going to listen to this again and again and take some notes, because I really love the power of storytelling. And I really love the fact that you mentioned that we should acknowledge all the good that we've done, because I feel like so many of us in that type A, just sort of go, charge, what's the next thing? Don't sit back and just reach around and pat yourself on the back for all the stuff you've already done. So you guys give yourself credit.
Yes, I am with you 100%. Acknowledge the great things that you've done. You're doing great work. Your mind wants to tell you all the things that you haven't done. It's just our survival mechanism to focus more on the negative. It's a natural occurrence that happens in the mind, but you have the consciousness within you to acknowledge some of the great things you've done as well.
Well, thanks, Jay Abbasi. Where can people find more about you?
So I am very involved on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's a great place to find me. You could just search Jay Abbasi, or on my website, which is jayabbasi.me. I'd say those are the two best places to find me.
I love it. I know we met on LinkedIn, and that's favorite place too. So thanks for being a guest on Whole CEO with Lisa G.
Oh, it was a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming to Whole CEO with Lisa G. After over 20 years helping people lose weight and get fit, I'm so excited to announce that I found the missing link with my coaching. Message me if you want to learn how to look better, feel better, and go faster with a master. Lisa G at lisagfit.com.